This is a whole crazy setup here. I'm sitting down with Mike. My name is Adam K.A.K. Bay. We are sitting down with Steven Aguilar, the assistant art director for World of Warcraft.
Okay.
And Ion Hazzikostas, the game director for World of Warcraft. And we're going to talk about Shadowlands.
Yep.
And I think, Mike, you have a question you want to ask first.
So, sockets on benthic gear. Was that a whoopsie?
Yes.
Yes.
Honestly,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, we thought so too. We were like, the cat.
No, yes. And I think it's one of those where once that was out there and people had started earning them, that's a hard thing to roll back.
Mm-hmm.
And sockets in general.
Yeah.
The power of sockets relative to item level and other things, particularly on
Yeah.
secondary or tertiary slots, is kind of out of hand right now.
And how did it feel in the office when you saw it happening? We were like, oh no. Is that kind of the approach?
They basically wincing, like, yeah, that's like, the intent was always, okay, these slots, there's something you can work towards, not so much the just roulette of, all right, keep rolling those benthic pieces until it ends up socketed.
Yeah.
But once it was out there, it was too late to take it back.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was a big deal. Like, I'm going to say that again. I really didn't think that was a big deal. The sockets on the benthic gear. The only thing that I would say is a problem is maybe that the benthic gear replaced even mythic rating gear. Here's why I didn't think it was a big deal. Is because it was like a 5% chance of it happening. Like, oh wow, you didn't even do it? Wait, what? I have all of the best in slot benthic gear on my character right now. Go look me up on Armory. I did every single one. Yeah, I rolled off all of these. So what are you talking about? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't think it's a big issue, guys. I don't. The thing is that it matters, like, what the source is. Like, if it's like a 1 in 20 chance, and you can sit there and roll the dice multiple times a day at it, and the moment that you get the correct dice roll, you're set for the entire tier. I don't think that really is a big deal. I don't think that's a huge problem at all. Do you have any of the bloat rays yet? I don't even know.
For sure.
Yeah.
Carry on.
I had a big question for Steve, if I could.
Okay.
So we just got to play.
Yep.
But this expansion, more than the others, really, was kind of freeform in what you could do in the zone and go back to more fantastical stuff. Was that amazing for you to come and be like, it's not been set in stone in a book somewhere, like how this zone looks.
Yeah.
And we've seen already how incredible Bastion looks already. Like, what was that like for you guys?
Yeah, it was it was new territory for us. We, like you just said, we didn't have anything that existed to reference from. Ian had in his presentation where there was that little icon with the angel on top of like that smoky sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we really had. So having to come up with the afterlife from scratch, that was exciting for the art team because it allowed us to explore new lands or new zones for the players, as well as a whole new cast of characters that could not be anything from Azeroth.
Yeah.
So very otherworldly, which was really challenging because we couldn't think of, oh, well, let's use a troll. This could be a troll character. No, this is, what the heck is this creature?
It's an owl.
Yeah, there you go. Or an owl. Yeah, a little owl guy. So yeah, it's been really fun coming up with all of it.
I can tell. Like, we walked around Bastion, and you're just like, okay, they had fun here.
The trees look painted.
In the design.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's awesome. We'll bounce back to Steven just a little bit. I'm sure we have a lot of burning questions for Ion. Well, we put us in with both of you, and we're like, Mike, what do we got to have some. So we have a couple of things broken down. So Ion, Covenant questions first. Some of these might be simple to go through and to get some clarifications on things, because the blue post just went out.
Okay.
But the passive and active abilities from Covenants used everywhere in the game. Endgame activities, PvP.
Yes, and there's no passive ability to my knowledge. They're both active abilities.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's more one combat ability that's class specific.
Okay.
So effectively,
I read the
the
class abilities for
and
passive
each
yesterday.
covenant has a more universal. It's almost like a covenant racial, if you think of it that way.
Okay.
It's more of a utility, convenience, opens up some options to you in navigating the world, avoiding some encounters as you see fit.
Alrighty. How hard will Soulbinds to Covenants be to respec? And are there any drawbacks to respecing?
So we'll have a lot more information about Soulbinds, the deep dive panel.
Okay.
I think a lot of those details also just frankly aren't set in stone right now.
Yeah.
I think Soulbinds are designed with more of a sense of horizontal progression in mind. The idea is you can undergo a soulbind with one of a set of souls that you'll be able to build a relationship with through your Covenant campaign and through that progression, and you'll unlock multiple, progress through the trees of multiple, but take one out into the world with you at any given time.
Okay.
Changing from one to the other will be a very simple matter. Now, if you've made choices within their individual trees, those are the sort of thing that's likely to be respecable, but not quite as fluidly.
Okay.
But we'll see how it plays out and how it feels, really.
We're just mostly wondering about how locked are you? You said permanent as a choice, but obviously that would be a problem with like locking a certain spec and class into a certain hierarchy depending on end-game numericals and things. That's why we're wondering.
When I said when you say permanent, what do you mean?
Well, if you
with
pick
reference to what?
Like if you pick one covenant, that's that character's covenant forever.
Okay, it's not.
Oh, that's a
permanent.
good question.
It is
That's a really good question.
Weighty choice.
Choice.
Think Aldor Scryer.
Right.
If you regret your choice, you can change it. You don't have to re-roll your character.
Right,
But
okay.
it's very actively not, I'm going to be Venthyr for this boss
Yeah.
and Kyrian for this boss, and then respect to Night Fae for my Mythic Plus tonight.
Okay. All right.
See, I just worry so much about that. I worry so much about that because it makes me feel like what's going to end up happening is that everybody's going to pick the same one. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's what's going to happen. And I don't know how Blizzard is going to be able to handle that.
So they will be.
We'll
You
see.
can't just do it.
We talk about
willy-nilly.
that? I think so.
But they will be able. You still be able to.
You will be able to, at a cost. It's not
Sure.
something to take lightly. It's more there to solve the I regret my choice.
Okay.
My friends are having more fun or
Mm-hmm.
whatever else. I want to experience what that's like, but definitely not I'm just going to casually go back and forth between these.
Okay. You want to get?
Yeah, so on that note, obviously, most of my questions are about the top end, is
Sure.
where we would
Yep.
go.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
What steps are you taking to avoid people feeling pigeonholed into certain covenants?
Good
like we saw
question.
with Aldor and Scryer,
Yes.
and even Lower City, where you focused that reputation.
Totally.
Because I felt like you were announcing TBC, actually, mostly. Obviously, we look at things and go, well, that was just so much better. We all have to go more, if there is one, or Bastion or whatever.
So, I think we're definitely mindful of the fact that when it comes down to a simple choice,
Yeah.
there's going to be a mathematical right answer. As well as
Okay.
we might want to balance a talent row, there's going to be the one that sims best, or certainly for a specific encounter is the right answer there.
Yeah.
Where I do think we actually can attain fuzzier choices is where it's a lot of options, a bucket of many choices together. Like, which is better, this talent or that talent? That's answerable. Which is better, mage or warlock? It depends. I know sometimes someone might argue that there's a specific answer to that question, but broadly, if someone asks you what class you should play, it really does depend. They have strengths and weaknesses. And when a covenant is the sum of a range of perks, a couple of active abilities, soulbinds which each have their own traits within them that are tunable, we feel confident that we can get to a point where there isn't a clear-cut right answer, where it's like, oh, if you're a warrior, if you don't pick Venthyr, you're screwing up.
That actually is a good answer. That's a good answer in general. I like the perspective that he's taking. So what he's thinking about doing is making the covenants give multiple abilities and multiple bonuses, so it's harder to decipher which one is the best because each one affects your character in different ways. That's actually that's like a 200 IQ solution. I mean, like that's good. I like that. I don't know if it'll work, but it's a good perspective to have.
Now, in a specific situation, is there likely to be a good answer there?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
But broadly, we want to make sure that no one feels like they made a clear right or wrong choice.
Okay.
And I know that's easier said than done.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And along that note, we looked certainly over BFA and Legion, is that each looking past just the launch of Shadowlands, because obviously the system feels like it's quite deep. There's a lot of detail to it. There's tech trees and stuff inside it. Is are we going to look similar to what we've seen of the last two expansions, where each patch has then added another system on top and another? What are we dumping from BFA is basically the gist of this question, and keeping rolling and iterating on throughout this, or are we going to see by the end of it there's three different, you're now in three covenants with different things going on?
So, I would say it's easy. Ideally, not. Right.
Okay.
There's a couple different answers there. I think in Legion, we didn't really plan for the long term of the artifact as well as we should have, and that led us to explore the Nether, like Crucible and other things. We just got to a point where it's like we could just keep adding a whole bunch of new passive traits, but there's no choice here. There's no customization. That was exhausted early. Battle for Azeroth, things like essences were there more as a band-aid to flaws in the system that quickly became apparent after Battle for Azeroth was live. That wasn't, we didn't launch the system with the intent of expanding it.
I just want to say they did not become apparent after Battle for Azeroth was live. They became apparent the second the system was announced. And despite all of the viewer and player and beta feedback and alpha feedback, they went through with it anyway. These issues that people had with Azerite gear were identified within 1 hour of the announcement of Azerite gear.
I think our goal with Shadowlands would be that there may be a horizontal or vertical expansion of the existing system, but not new systems layered on top of it. So you might get an additional Soulbind that you gain access to through later story content that broadens your options, or an extra row to their trees. But that's a very different story than a totally different progression system, like, let's say, Essences.
All right. With the Covenants being the new thing within Shadowlands, what are Horde and Alliance and the original faction, Red versus Blue, doing in that regard? If you're in the same Covenant with a whole bunch of Horde in your alliance, can you communicate? Can you do things together? Is
That's
there
a
any
really good
connection
question.
there? Is it still just Red versus Blue, period? There's no crossover?
Yeah, that's a good
It's
question.
the uneasy tension. And there is separation, there isn't cross-communication, there isn't cross-grouping, but it's similar to how the class orders worked in Legion, right?
Okay.
You were technically both on the same team, you're both part of the Druid class order hall or Demon Hunter, but there's a fundamental difference. And, I think as we're going to see how the Alliance versus Horde story advances, this is an armistice. This isn't holding hands and forgiving and forgetting. There's a large portion of the Alliance that are like, hey, literally you just committed genocide against a portion of our group.
Right.
We're not just going to put bygones to say bygones are bygones and move on from there.
Okay.
And likewise,
You mean like WOD?
there are a Horde that harbor long-held grudges. But it's moving away from a period of open warfare back to the state of uneasy tension that a lot of Warcraft has seen over the years. When we're fighting the Lich King, fighting Deathwing, we set differences aside where it makes sense.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, Alliance and Horde is a foundational pillar of the Warcraft franchise.
That's right.
And the moment they are
That's fucking
truly
right.
united in a long-term sense and there's no barrier there, I think we've lost something that makes Warcraft Warcraft.
So War Mode stays.
War mode definitely stays.
War mode
Good.
stays. All right.
Expected.
And then I guess we have to bring up the new AP, I suppose.
Okay,
You brought up
here
the
it
artifact
is.
power grind is gone or going away. But what is Anima? And so it starts with an A. So what are the key differences?
It's Anima points.
How do we get
Let
it?
me tell you all about Anima power.
Yeah.
And-
No, he said it.
No.
Okay. Yep.
So,
I knew it. Told you guys.
We have a lot of questions we're still figuring out here. But philosophically, I think it's moving away from a place of open-ended, infinite progression with diminishing returns that almost dares the hardcore to see how far you can push it.
3 million residuum.
Yes, which is
For
all,
example.
all turning into silver.
Yes.
In the near future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me-
Thank you.
I want to listen to that again. Sorry, I want to make sure that I hear very clearly what he said there.
But philosophically, I think it's moving away from a place of open-ended, infinite progression with diminishing returns that almost dares the hardcore to see how far you can push it.
3 million residuum.
Thank God. Okay, all right. I misheard that, and I thought that's what they were doing with the with the residuum. Or sorry, that's what they were doing with the Anima stuff. But no, that's the exact opposite of what they're doing. Thank fucking God. Holy shit. Am I gonna have a BIS list in Shadowlands? Like, am I about to have my BIS list? Is this what we've been waiting on for so fucking long? Is this gonna happen? Oh my God.
Yes, which is
For
all,
example.
all turning into silver.
Yeah.
In the near future.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and I saw Flex's list of his
Yeah,
characters,
yeah.
and my head exploded.
Yeah.
But and moving away from that towards a place that's more easily attainable caps, and then open-ended flexibility. So imagine in your Covenant Sanctum,
Hey,
you're
that's
gonna,
me.
you're, you're
It
gonna
is.
do various activities and likely earn and retrieve anima from the Maw and elsewhere that is essential to fueling your Covenant's activities. The first bit of it every week will effectively keep the lights on in your Covenant Sanctum, and that would further the strength of your Soulbind.
Okay.
And that's a minimum level of engagement. Think of it as like capping Valor and Mists of Pandaria.
That's
or even
good.
Maybe
I
a bit
like
short
that.
From that.
I like
As
that.
long
That's
as you're
fine
doing
with me.
that every week, you are optimal. As well as catch-up mechanisms that aren't some mathematically driven formula like knowledge, but let's say whether you're an alt, you took some time off, you're coming to the expansion late, you are a few points behind where par is or where the curve is.
Yeah.
That may be something that just shows up randomly on world quests where you can just earn an entire talent point effectively while you're in this catch-up state until you get caught up to par. Because
Okay.
we don't want this sense of I am behind or
Right.
but we do want goals to look forward to and choices and player power progression.
Okay.
So
I actually think that's really good. The issue that I have with like AP grinding and like my concern with it is that whenever you have like the grind that you're doing for the AP, you always have in the back of your mind that if I just wait until next week, this is going to be 30% faster. And it adds a certain amount of like futility to what you're doing. It's like you're always like, oh, well, I could have done this a lot faster next week. And you always feel, I don't know about you, but I always feel like I'm wasting my time. Why would I farm AP right now whenever artifact knowledge isn't capped? And you're kind of like delaying something until later on, and there's never like an efficient time to farm. And so anytime that you are farming, you're always farming with the mindset of this would be easier later on, but I'm doing it now for no fucking reason. I don't like that at all. And so hopefully they don't have that same issue with with these two.
the idea is something along the lines of an easily attainable minimum threshold that's required for power optimality. And then any extra that you get can turn into utility, cosmetics, things that aren't making you hit harder or making your purple parses into orange parses in the raid.
That's the bottom line.
There's a whole different psychology there.
Yeah. Okay. So is it still from essentially everything? There won't be.
I read a stupid message in chat. I'm gonna read this here. Why do an expansion now when it's going to be trivial next expansion? Because the next expansion isn't coming out next week. That's why. It matters how long it's going to be between point A and point B. If you work your ass off for an item that's going to be good in the game for a year, that feels better than working your ass off for an item that's going to be 30% worse next week. That's why it's different. Everything is fleeting, but whenever you're literally seeing your time fleeting away every week on a 30% basis, then yeah, you start to feel like you're wasting your damn time.
Like an island's version of Anima dump every week? It's just sort of from every activity, or
to be decided. I think we wanted to have some theming to it, but a broad range of activities. Certainly, no matter what your play style is, since this is a universal system, you should feel like you can keep up and play the game the way you want to play it without being forced into activities you don't necessarily enjoy.
Okay, that answers a bit of a question later on.
Okay,
but we'll throw it to Steve, and then you want to ask. You can talk about Torgeth.
Yeah, sure.
But so Steve, this is kind of veiled as like one of the positive memes in the community, and we bring it up a lot when we see everything. And I was sitting on the media platform with Mike watching the Shadowlands reveal trailer, and we basically just nudged each other. It's like, oh, this is the
positive
team.
memes
Here we
you
go.
mean?
So what? Yeah. So what do you guys feel internally, or what do you share around the office, or how do you just feel about the community's perception of just like, oh, it's always the art team sort of carrying this or moving this forward, changing the state of the game, because you guys have always made some incredible scenery. The landscapes were in, the dungeons, the raids. I mean, you just tested Nyalotha.
And
this is a waste of a question.
Because you're always way ahead of where we are experiencing.
This is such a waste of a question.
So do you have to like roll back each time to sort of like relive, oh, we made that a year ago, and they finally get to see it. Like, what do you guys do to catch up with all that?
Oh gosh. I think we just wait until it hits like PTR.
Okay.
When once it's out there and the public is actually starting to play it and
Mm-hmm.
they have some feedback, that's where we sort of return to it and just sort of keep it, start to address like anything that we see. Oh, they're reacting negatively to a particular thing that we created, like whether it's an armor set or maybe it's an effect for one of your abilities, you know, and it's like, oh, maybe it just doesn't look right for a paladin, and we'll go back and we'll make those changes. But that's usually like Ian will come and we'll sort of discuss those things.
Okay.
Okay.
But for the most part, yeah, it's like we'll
Okay.
finish it, and then right when they get to it, it's exciting to see. Okay, they're actually playing through it. What are their thoughts with all of?
No, actually, you know what? That turned into a good question. Yeah, it did.
Like
It's a good answer.
Nyalotha, like that was challenging. That skybox was amazing.
Yeah.
The raid is a zone.
Yes.
Not just like,
Yeah.
you know, like Ulir was like,
That was
it's just like a tower under the ground.
Yeah.
But Nyalotha is a zone.
Yes. And seeing like that giant tentacle up in the, or tentacles up in the sky, wherever you're looking. Just,
We actually saw that accidentally because we accidentally killed the boss. We
Oh.
clicked a thing, there's a shiny thing, and they were like, whoa, okay, then now this is Nyalotha. There it is.
yeah. Yeah. So that was very challenging to try to figure out, okay, how do we make it look like you're in this world or in the mind of N'Zoth.
Of an old
So
god, yeah.
that was-
That's a lot.
Yeah, that was something, again, like we were trying to figure out what would that look like, and how do we make it feel like your mind is being messed with as well. So I think that was one of the important things that you had.
Yeah,
asked,
it's pretty
like,
hard to
can you
do.
Pull this off, you know, this is very important because that's a key story element.
And the follow-up to that, I don't know if this is directly your department on this, but the new character customization creation, does that mean
Ooh.
that the entire overall arcing
Ask about
structure has
boob
been
size
retooled and
sliders.
updated? That's been a huge ask in the community for a long time, that the character creation, essentially the engine,
Ask
is
about the
what's being
boobs.
updated. We can't see it on the media floor right now. It's not something that's implemented, but is that wholly reworked, or is that just like more tickers to unlock
Okay.
every preset, essentially?
Right now, we're still discussing what
Okay.
that's going to look like, because now that we're actually having that artwork created, we're starting to figure out, okay, we're going to need to open up more slots for, you know, the customizing, like picking your customization. So it's still undecided right now. We're still thinking about it and coming up with some new ideas because we definitely want to at least make a visual change to things.
That'd be great. I wonder how that's gonna work with the armor sets and everything. Like, yeah, give me titties. Well, I'm okay. Like, if they want to have like equality, right? And so like for a boob size slider, I have to also have a dick size slider. I think that's a win-win. Like that's a win-win. Like I'm totally okay with that. Like we have a boob size and a dick size slider. We're using both of them at the same time. I mean, that sounds great. That sounds great and amazing to me.
Okay.
Okay.
I think on that, I think the current plan is, I mean, it's not. WoW is never going to be a game with sliders where you can pick, how long you want your nose to be and all of that. There is definitely a lot of under the hood engineering work to
Man.
remove old limits, to separate out things that were tied to each other,
Man.
to really unleash the art team's potential.
That's just what I was talking about.
I wanted to touch on some of the philosophies you're going into Shadowlands with. Sure. Certainly a lot of the features that came with BFA we felt required, and you touched on this a little bit.
Yeah.
And kind of continued on there. Is that something you're actively working against in Shadowlands, saying, so we looked at Torgath, the tower, which
Yes.
looks fantastic, but some
It's
people
cool.
won't like it, obviously. But is it linked to, say, the legendary crafting system?
It is.
So even if you like it or not, you have to do it.
Yep, that's right.
If you want to be optimal, yes, you have to do it.
And that's fine. There are certain things in the game that you should have to do. I think Blizzard is too afraid of making people have to do things. I believe that. Like, I mean, this is what I liked about the Essence system. Is you want all the good essences? Go fucking do Arena, bitch. Go fucking do Mythic Plus. Now go do World BGs. Okay, alright, that sounds good. You had fun with that? No, you didn't? Well, fuck you. Go do a World Quest again. Oh, wow, you want your bonus single target damage? Go do the raid now, motherfucker. And you've got to go do all kinds of different shit. People sell booze for gold? Hey, dude. I mean, listen, man. Like, the thing is that giving people these extra things that they can fucking do it's cool. I consider that a huge fucking positive. And I want to see a lot more different elements of the game that maybe aren't necessarily required, but if you want to be good at the game, I think the Essence system it encapsulates a lot of what I want to see the game be. And I know that some people, the Essence system isn't a big thing with them. They don't like it a lot. But personally, I love the Essence system, and I think that Blizzard did a great job by making it. And I'd like to see more content that follows that same paradigm design, like that design paradigm.
I think now, how much do you have to do it? That's a much more flexible thing, right? I think we want to have reasons for people who love it and just want to go in for the intrinsic enjoyment to feel like that's worth their while. But with a major feature like this, whether it's the garrison in Warlords, the artifacts in Legion, there is some amount of participation required with any sort of core build-around feature that aspects of the expansion are tied into.
And where do you draw the line between this is now a chore versus this is something that we think is
it's a time investment, right?
Like how do you differentiate?
Yeah, it's the amount of time you take.
I mean, hopefully keep it fun. I know it sounds simple, but I think a lot of that has to do with variety and replayability.
If you enjoy it, it won't feel like a chore. It's a good point.
It's an activity that every raider who's trying to be competitive pretty much does their weekly Mythic Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And there is enough variety from week to week that I think that experience stays relatively fresh and interesting. Even if dungeons aren't your favorite activity, it's not something that I've heard a ton of complaints about, of, I have to do one dungeon every week.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Different dungeons.
You're right, it's not a big deal.
It's also a system that clearly we've seen some people can put dozens and dozens of hours in a week into because it's just inherently incredibly fun and rewarding for them. That's
for them
with something like Torghast.
For them,
being designed from the ground up with a lot of replayability and variety, where you want to do another run because you think you can get farther. You want to see what crazy build you can put together with the abilities that you're going to get.
I think that's really true. I'm really excited to do the tower, Torgoth, or whatever the fuck, right? I think it's going to be awesome. But I think it also might be an issue where, like, the first, like, month or so, you want to play it all the time, and then, like, it gets boring after that. And I think that's where Blizzard's real challenge is going to come in as to how to make this. It's like Fortnite, for example. Like, the game completely changes very, very regularly. And compare that to WoW, that doesn't really happen as often. I think people are going to get tired of it more quickly. Like, imagine if they had, like, a new Mythic Plus affix, like, every 3 weeks or something like that. That completely changes the way that you do Mythic Plus dungeons. Like, for people, they would probably go in more regularly and do them because they would want to test it out and see what it's like. And I can see, obviously, that's everything about that is not positive, but overall, I think that if they want to make Torgoth replayable on the long term, they have to be a lot faster with making large changes to it to make it more dynamic.
The roguelike formula is one that, tons of our favorite games that we play, can give you various examples, use those elements. And I think applying that, overlaying that on WoW's combat engine and the external meta progression systems of your WoW character is something that's really exciting to us.
Expanding on that, then, touching on another area, because earlier in BFA you were like, we're okay if you guys stop doing world quests and stuff. Yeah. But ultimately we ended up having to do them because they tied so much to the artifact power system. And this kind of ties again to concurrent players who don't go and come back and they don't play it like a seasonal game. Is often when a new piece of content comes out, if you have stuck with the content and you've tried to stay relevant, is that you feel pigeonholed into, I still have to do my world quests every day, despite the fact I'm exalted 9 times over. I kill everything in one sweep.
Yes.
And certainly when Najjatar and Mechagon launched, for a recent example, is if you're a current character, you kind of walk in like the Black Plague of Death. And you eradicate that zone as if, like,
it's awesome.
They should be afraid of us arriving here. When you're designing content like that, and world quests and stuff, which seemingly designed for fresh characters, this should be how you should boost up. You get your emissary rewards, you get some basic stuff to get you going. Yet as current players, we often feel like we're doing the wrong thing by still continuously playing, because we feel like we need to do this because in this expansion, of course, we had to unlock Azerite armor, so I still need to do this content despite out-leveling it. And then when new content comes out, it's also seemingly designed for fresh players as well, whereas there's all this other content that existed for them in the first place. How do we reconcile that, whereas existing players don't feel like... It kind of would make more sense, because this is the feedback I get, obviously, is it would make more sense for me to stop playing and come back in a few months, which is not something we obviously want to do.
I mean, that's always... Right, there's always that tug of war between progression and catch-up. And that's been the case, really, since Burning Crusade came out, and people replaced their Naxxramas epics with items they got from a quest giver, that was not nearly as hard won. And so technically, yes, if you take a break from the game, You will have more powerful gear and things waiting for you when you come back, but you also don't get the moment-to-moment advantage of having that as you're trying to overcome the latest content, earn achievements, titles, or just the general feeling of progression.
I feel like that's like in vanilla WoW. Like if you stop in BWL, you stop playing in BWL, and you come back, and it's like a year later and Nax is out, everybody doesn't have BWL gear. And you still needed to do BWL gear. The way that they solve that, in my mind, is they reduce the amount of catch-up mechanics. I think that's the main issue. Yeah, they reduce the amount of catch-up mechanics. ZG is catch-up? Yeah, but ZG doesn't fill every slot, right? And if they reduce the amount of catch-up mechanics, I think people would be more willing to play the game longer because they would know that their progress that they're making now would be more, it'd be more static, and it wouldn't be as fleeting, and it wouldn't just be replaced in a couple of months.
A couple of specific things you touched on. I would say that was one of the problems with Artifact Power, frankly, that the open-ended grindability of it made you keep feeling like you needed to scour the world map for AP, even when you otherwise would have long since said, like, I think we would have been totally fine if when Nazjatar came out and Mechagon came out, you felt zero obligation other than cosmetics or achievements to go do Vol'dun world quests or anything of those sort going on, but that wasn't the case. Ideally, it should have been. Separately, there's just the overall amount of power creep, which I think is a little bit out of hand of late.
Yeah.
And part of that is something as a result of something you touched on earlier, which is layering systems on top of each other.
Yeah.
Where you have the multiplicative cumulative effect of, okay, yes, you got your item level that we've always had, but you also got
essences,
more powerful Azerite pieces. Also, you got these essences, multiple essences that are, and so by the end of the day, you're not just the 30-40% stronger that you were coming out of a raid tier, you're 70 or 80% stronger.
Which is
a
lot
makes
more.
A lot of things in the game break down. And ideally, even if you are a raider, you shouldn't go into a new zone like Nazjatar or Mechagon and feel like you're just, walking death, laying waste to everything in sight.
We felt genocidal, because some of the war campaign had us killing millions of people. And with one Sunfire, I'm like, I'm sorry.
Right. Should you be
It's
more
World of Warcraft, bro.
Has taken a break or just hit max level?
That's the way it is.
Of course. Should the difference be what it is today? No. And that's something that we're bearing in mind as we design some of the Shadowlands systems. I think the idea of Soulbinds being more horizontal progression as opposed to, hey, this endgame system means that we almost owe you an extra incremental 2-3% power a week that's going to compound forever. That's not sustainable in a way that's healthy for the game.
No.
That's one of the things we've learned.
It hasn't
in the last
been.
couple of expansions.
If I could piggyback off that then, because I did want to bring up gear, despite I know it's kind of in the air. The corruption system's being tested. We don't know what's going to happen there. But I think it would be amiss, and people would hate me if I didn't bring up the fact that we've ended up in a scenario, because it goes in what you just said, with us physically having to pay third-party websites to figure out our WoW gear and see if it's any good, which is where we are now, is actually paying websites to figure it out for us. What's the team thinking internally about that? And
that's too much.
How have we got so far away from Mr. Pandaria, which is like, no one should even need to leave the raid without knowing it's a good thing, when we removed reforging and things.
I mean, to be fair, I think back in Mists, people were solving their own traveling salesman problems to maximize hit and expertise and reforge 9 pieces of gear when you got 1 new item. I think. Yeah,
but that was still so much fucking easier than having to pay for a raid simulation bot. I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. Like, yeah, I get that it was complicated then, but now it's like what your hit rating cap is. Like, you don't know what the chance of these procs on the Azerite pieces of gear are. You have to do a bunch of testing and everything like that. It's completely fucking different. I can see what he's saying, but still, it's on a completely different level that makes it a different conversation, in my opinion. It's not obligatory. No, I don't think it is either, but people still want to do it the best they can.
Part of this is just a growing sophistication in the community. Honestly, I don't have a good answer to it, and I think it's something we talk about a lot. I would love to hear one, because I'd love to, to be able to just apply it to the game. But I think the challenge is, if you wanted to kill simming, I think items, you'd probably just have to get rid of stats. And if truly items had power, and if this number is bigger than that number, you put the item on, great. But even if we got rid of every sort of, Titan forging,
make it more obvious.
it's not a readily accessible problem to understand which trinket is better, or when you hit certain breakpoints of, the thresholds that change your stat weights or the relative weights. And the fact that these tools exist means that optimizing players are going to take advantage of them. What we want to do is at least narrow the gap between those who are doing what seems intuitive and those who are going to crunch the numbers. Because I think in almost every game, there is theory crafting. Theory crafting has been part of WoW, of every one of these genres, for as long as you can remember it. And I don't think we'd want to design a game where there isn't room for sophistication, and the person who wants to take the time to math things out doesn't have some edge.
Okay.
It's just a question of how large is that edge. If you're going ahead and equipping the higher item, wearing what feels like it should be right, if you're a couple percent behind the person who optimizes, that's not the end of the world. If you're a dozen percent behind, 20% behind, that's a problem.
So I guess the final question then, while we wrap up here, is
that's great. That's actually a good answer. Like, the intuitive decision should not deviate that much from the simulated decisions or the sim-crafted decisions. That's actually a good answer. And I think that the way they do that, the way that you succeed at that, is you create a system where people can actually test and know how much these different bonuses are helping them. Yeah, it's return for casuals. Well, not everything in the game has to be for super hardcore people that take themselves seriously and want to spend all day simulating DPS. I mean, it's not. It doesn't always have to be like that. We need one more healer, by the way, for our runs. If there's a healer that wants to come to our ZF runs, please go ahead and message me.
If as gear customization is a big part of this, is tier gear staying or coming back?
Okay,
or
just
is there
tell
a
me,
new
Ian.
Style of gear.
Just say it.
You don't know yet.
TBD.
Okay.
Yeah, I think sets, I think, are fascinating and something we want to continue exploring.
Okay.
Okay.
Part of what led to us moving away from class sets, some of it was exploring different aesthetics, but another part of it was just looking at how itemization and the availability of items has changed over time in WoW. When sets were first introduced, and Classic is a very readily available reminder of this.
Yes.
People working for weeks and months to cobble together a full class set, it being a journey as you progress through the raid zone. With the increased number of loots that bosses drop, multiple difficulties, etc., class sets had gotten to a point where it was a box that you ticked often like 3 weeks into a tier, even more so with, Master Looter or loot trading and bonus rolling the bosses that had the tier pieces you wanted. You almost felt incomplete before you had your set. And then for the remainder of that tier, those slots were dead because you were never going to consider a non-set piece in a slot that shared a set piece. And so what was that really doing for us? Like, there's a cool fantasy to completing a set.
Yeah.
But what it had turned into in practice was very far removed.
It was like a shopping
from
list.
The long-term goal, and was instead actually limiting options. And so that made us take a step back. Let's say, let's put this on pause for a bit.
Yeah.
We'd love to get back there one day, but we also want to do it in a way that we feel makes sense for the game as a whole.
Okay. So we'll find out more about that when beta starts. So beta day? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
And we still have a lot to figure out
Sure.
and discuss with the community and hear feedback on. Like, this is the beginning of a road that's going to lead to Shadowlands being in your hands in 2020, but we stand at the beginning of the road.
In 2020?
Alrighty.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Master
I didn't quite hear that.
Master Looter's coming back, correct? That's what I heard.
Loot and Mythic raids, I think, is the specific.
I would say anything is possible, but not currently in our plans. Sorry.
Okay. Ian.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And just to clear the air before we begin, I can actually say buff enhancement. The words are able to come out.
Just don't.
No. Too late, you missed it.
I like his tears.
No. I just choose
Okay.
not to.
It's recording.
Okay.
It's already recorded.
But that's a lie. You could.
Okay, dude.
You could. You just did.
Yeah.
I saw you see word up. You said it right to him. He was right there.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
All right. So what does this mean? This means that Master Looter is going to come back. Because if they say it's TBD, that means that if we bitch and complain about it enough, they'll do it. And that's what I think that's what it is. So if you bitch and you cry and complain about something for so long, Blizzard will eventually bring it back. Remember with tier sets, they're thinking about bringing those back. Remember with getting rid of Titan Forging, they're bringing that back, right? You bitch, you cry, you complain about it, you get mad over and over and over. That's all you talk about. It's Blizzard gave us Classic. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, eventually you're going to wear them down. So bring Titan Forging back? Fuck you.